Hello, everybody. Welcome to Business Bites. I hope everyone is having a fantastic Wednesday so far. And I'm very excited to see everyone joining us today for another awesome panel discussion. For those of you who may not know, my name is Nathan and I am with HanaHaus here in Newport Beach. If you see me around, feel free to say hi. And as a quick background, Business Bites is a collaborative virtual series hosted by Honest Access and HanaHaus. If you're not familiar, Honest Access is an innovation consulting firm based in Southern California, and HanaHaus is a flexible co-working space and cafe with locations in both Palo Alto and Newport Beach. Now today, I do encourage you all to use the chat feature at the bottom to engage and ask questions throughout the session. And as a quick starter, how about we all have everyone go to the chat box below and comment where you're tuning in from, as we'd love to see where our audience is coming from. As a reminder, this session is being recorded and will be posted on our YouTube channel and sent out via email within the next week. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to the amazing Kelly from Honest Access.
Nathan, thank you so much. And thank you to everybody for joining live. We know there are a lot of competing demands for everyone's time. And we try to bring new and thoughtful topics to this Business Bites series. Today's a requested topic. The topic is this concept of innovation, really looked at from a slightly different angle, the idea of planning for innovation and designing a growth roadmap that supports pivots within your company. And so really looking forward to having the opportunity to collaborate with, we have incredible speakers on. As we begin today's session, as just a friendly reminder that when you are not speaking, if you could just keep your microphone on mute, that would be greatly appreciated. So that said, friendly welcome. Please do feel free to use chat. We're really thrilled to have you here, and we're really excited to get started listening to our experts. So starting with you, Ben, if you could just please share a bit about your professional background and a little bit about your connection to the concept of innovation, particularly if you don't mind, as it relates to company growth.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everybody. My name's Ben Stokes. I am the founder of Chasing Rainbows, which is a venture fund that specifically invests in underrepresented founders, and namely the LGBTQ plus community. And we focus on pre-seed investments. I have a background as a founder myself, actually. So I kind of understand both sides of this fence, I guess you could say. So I had a company called Social Table, which was a social dining platform. And so the idea behind it was that you could book and pay for a single seat at a group table at a restaurant as a way of meeting people. Anyone who has been to the Wednesday wine downs through Start Out, that was kind of part of the brainchild that was Social Table previously. Obviously, things had to change when the pandemic hit. So, I can definitely say often timing is a big thing, and those forces around you that you often can't control, and really makes a great opportunity for a founder to be really innovative in the way that they approach and go about keeping their business alive. And so that's definitely something that I can speak very, very strongly to, and thankfully with some success as well. So yeah, looking forward to sharing that with you.
Thanks so much, Ben. And Elizabeth, would love the same from you, a little about your background and your connection to today's topic.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much for having me, and so excited to meet this audience here as well today. So yeah, I'm Elizabeth Scallon, born and raised Seattleite. I have been working in the startup ecosystem, innovation ecosystem for about 15 plus years. I used to lead the University of Washington startup incubation system called Motion Labs, where we were helping grad students and professors and other entrepreneurs around the Washington State area go from idea stage to help them get their initial growth up to the Series A. And it's been really fun helping just the entrepreneurial community across Seattle. Had a couple of different roles where even, worked for WeWork and unlocked their innovation group called WeWork Labs for the West Coast. So really, how do you just take, helping entrepreneurs in one network, but helping them to connect to other resources and other networks, be that investors or talent or even customers. And then, also been helping out over at Amazon to think through some of their innovation pipeline. And then, but the thing I'm most proud of is founding a nonprofit called Find Ventures, where we're the earliest stage funding non-dilutive, large transformative grants wrapped around with resources and mentorship to really take great companies that are usually neglected from the capital markets and provide them resources so that they can grow and change. And so what I really love is, you can have an idea, but how do you take that idea and really execute on that idea so that you can attract people to work on that idea, attract customers where they believe in your solution, and then help it to grow. I also teach at the University of Washington in the business school, entrepreneurship and pitching and persuasion. So how do you really craft that story to get people excited that, and build that trust with them that they can believe in you to take that idea and take it to the next round. So I'm very early stage. So growth can also mean, at the very early stages of innovation is that growth and that first blossom rather than late stage, very late growth. So when I'm talking about growth, I'm talking about that very early stage of growth, of taking that idea and actually start executing on it, creating that initial product market fit, and creating that buy-in from early stage customers. So really excited to be here. Thank you again so much, Kelly, and excited to learn more from these other panelists as well.
Well, thank you, Ben. Thank you, Elizabeth. And I think our audience, especially the live audience here, thank you for being on the line. I think it's really wonderful that we have such a gamut covered in terms of the type of professional experience, from academic to nonprofit to the Fortune 100. We're really able to talk through innovation in each of these different elements. For those who don't know, I'm Kelly O'Connell, and I run the 360 Venture Collective Venture Fund, as well as the On Its Axis People Division. And in wearing these two hats, I've had the opportunity to partner with both enterprise clients and early stage startups. And one of the things I know that we hear a lot about is, how do you have a compelling vision, a plan for an organization, a defined roadmap, and still allow for that room for change? And so I'm going to bring this one back to you, Ben, and I'm going to ask you to just weigh in a little bit on this concept of what is a growth roadmap, and what's your personal perspective on the role of a roadmap as it relates to planning for startup growth?
Yeah, sure. That's a big question, but absolutely happy to try and answer it. I think, that age-old adage of, if you plan to fail, if you plan to fail, you fail to plan. No, hang on. Did I get that wrong? Hang on. Sorry, it is 4 a.m. here, so I apologize if I'm getting this wrong. If you plan to fail, you fail to plan.
You fail to plan.
Yeah. Yes, thank you.
There you go. Yeah.
Thank you. And so the point of what I'm trying to get at here is that as a founder, you kind of have to have some sort of direction that you want to go in with your product and with your goal or with your company. I think one of the things that we're very fortunate about as a founder, an early stage founder in particular, is the fact that you can go to your customers and start asking them questions about what they need as well. And that really also helps cement the direction that your product needs to take. But as the founder, you still need to have a direction that you have that you're going to sort of start working towards. And that direction doesn't necessarily have to be set in stone, but the idea behind it is that you just need to have some form of plan about how you're going to go from point A to point B, and then so on. And then obviously, again, I go back to the point of really being able to ask your customers as well, because your customers are the ones who are going to be using your product, particularly your early adopters, and they're going to help you define a lot about that roadmap and where you should be leading the product as well. There are 4 things that are really important whenever I think about a team, and that's the team, the product, the execution, and the timing. And so all of those factors also help direct the roadmap at the same time. Yeah.
Well, I love that answer, Ben. And I think that that concept of those four things, you said it was the team, and then you said it was,
Team, timing, product, and execution.
I think we'll have that go in the chat because I think it's a really important point. Elizabeth, I'm going to send exactly the same question over to you. Is there anything that you would add on this idea of planning for startup growth or on this definition of a growth roadmap?
Yeah, I think, I mean, I agree everything with what Ben said. So just in addition to everything that he said there, I think, when you're talking about your product roadmap and you're talking about your growth roadmap, I think it's always really important to also start with why. What are you doing? What problem are you actually solving? Because I think sometimes we get so far ahead of down the line of just thinking about the product, right? So I've worked at universities and I've talked about that. And a lot of time people are like, I just created this great technology and then I need to now find a market for it. I need to find a customer for it. But it's also like, well, is there, and I loved how Ben was talking about timing, like, is there a need for it? Is this an urgent thing that we're trying to solve for in the problem? Is it, so is it important and is it urgent? And really making sure that whatever your solution is actually solves a real problem. A lot of great startups have wonderful technology, but if there isn't a real problem out there that needs to be solved, it's irrelevant. And so I think, always making sure why you're doing something. What is it that's, that you're trying to solve for? What is that problem that you're going after? You can make sure that, you can change your product as you're getting the feedback and and the understanding of the larger market of what's happening, you can stay true to your company, right? And you can stay true to, well, this is why we exist and this is what we're trying to accomplish. And so understanding that, you can make sure that, your product, that your company isn't just one product, but maybe it's for the long haul, maybe different evolutions of that product, maybe complementary to products that really solve that solution. But it gives you more variability when you focus on that growth roadmap as what is the problem you're solving and how, and what are the steps that you really are trying to solve that problem. But so I would always say, just like think constantly about the problem space that you're solving and not about just the technology or the product that you're providing, but take into account the larger mission, purpose, the why you're solving that, so that you can also stay open, right? Open to feedback that, hey, maybe this product isn't what the market really wants. Maybe this feature that you think is really important is actually inconsequential, because that way your mind just stays open. So I think with the growth roadmap, you also have to have that growth mindset, where you're not fixated on just a product, but really fixated on the problem statement and the problem space.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with what you said there, Elizabeth. Absolutely. Because I think, to further what you said, I think that when you think about it, if you've had a tough day at the office, your why is the only thing that's going to get you to go back tomorrow. And so constantly thinking about your why and having that as your North Star, understanding that that's the problem you're solving, then that's the only thing that gets you through when you've had a really tough day, for sure.
I love that. I love this concept of tying the growth roadmap to a growth mindset. And I love this idea of tying your problem to the audience served, right? So thinking not just that compelling why of the problem that you're solving, but the compelling value of the audience you're serving, and allowing those things to define the timing really help to create execution that builds customer champions and makes some other parts of the process easier. So great insight, Ben and Elizabeth. We're going to come to you first with this one, Elizabeth, and I'm going to ask, do you personally feel the approach to product innovation and growth is different today than it has been in the past? And if so, why?
Yeah, I love this. The name of the book is escaping me right now, but we used to think of innovation and product roadmaps as a really insular process where, again, and sometimes it was really technology based. I just created this new widget. The widget's really exciting. Okay, let me figure out some marketing and get it to process. Now we're really about open innovation, being able to build in public, where now, hey, we don't have to, be scared to share our ideas. no VC will ever sign an NDA, right? Or none that I know of. And so it's like, you have to be able to share your ideas open at first and let people, as Ben was saying, the execution is so incredible. That team that you have is your unique value proposition, right? And so what you're doing and what you're building, getting that stakeholders engaged early on, and stakeholders being outside of your organization and outside of your investors. We're talking about the public, we're talking about future customers, we're talking about future employees, we're talking about future investors. That open concept is really different today than how it was. And people refer to this as like that I have a vision in my head of like a funnel that has like holes in it where, maybe you get some of these initial ideas for product innovation from your customers. Maybe they write in and say, hey, wouldn't it be great if you did X, Y, or Z? Or, you may get it from a partnership that you have, and together you build this product innovation, because maybe you can't do it alone, because maybe your ideas are to go to the moon, right? And so you need to partner with a lot of different groups to be able to create that end product that you're looking for. And so really what used to be a closed system of innovation where we had one group sit in a lab and tinker and create, and then we threw on marketing and we threw on all these other ways of business. Now it's all about open and, building in public, engaging your stakeholders on early. And that is, I think, the biggest change that we've just seen, in the last couple of decades.
That's a great insight. This concept of removing secrecy from product development is really tied to this idea of open innovation. Ben's joining us all the way from Australia, very early in the morning. So I'm a big fan of the belief that technology itself, even the fact that we're all here, is a compelling element that has allowed for change and collaboration. And Ben, I'm going to send this one to you. Do you agree that the approach to innovation is different?
Absolutely agree. I think the fact that I can be halfway around the world and speaking to you from the future, essentially, and I can still get on a call and hopefully share some insights. It's pretty amazing when you really think about it. I think the other element that I want to touch base on is the fact that MVPs are so important in this innovation element. I think, it's so easy for us today to get a product that we sort of, have a loose idea of and get it out the door within a very short time frame. And I think technology has definitely allowed us to do that, which means that we can start getting feedback on the product and what we're building really early, which means that we can start building. I think, when you think about it, 10, 20 years ago, coming up with a product, that took a long time to actually get through all of the different, not only building aspects of the product, but then also how do you go out about marketing your product to people outside of your organization as well. And getting users and particularly getting those super users. Whereas today, I think we're in a very fortunate position that, there are so many groups online that, if you've got a new idea, a new product idea, you can literally just send a survey to a Facebook group and get them to start answering questions to help you start building that innovation. And so we're really fortunate about how open people are to sort of having that collaborative approach to product design. As Elizabeth was saying, getting that as soon as you can and from your customers means that you can start building ASAP as well.
That's great. I'm going to come back to something you said at the start of the question, Ben, and you described it a little, but for anybody in our audience who's listening in, can you share what an MVP is?
Yeah, sure. So an MVP is a minimally viable product. And so when I start thinking about that, it's about understanding what the very, very basic product that you can create and get out the door as fast as you can, which shows the overall concept of what you're trying to create. And so, it doesn't matter if this is not necessarily perfect. And I think that that's the big thing that a lot of founders struggle with. And I know I certainly did when I was a founder as well. We're struggling to sort of release your product out to the wild, I guess you could say, because there's this fear that, people are going to judge you. But at the end of the day, if your basic concept is there and people are able to click buttons and, do the basic things that they need to do, then that's okay. It doesn't have to be perfect. And I think that that's really important to understand, particularly in innovation, is that concepts are the main element that you're trying to get across here and convey. And so once you're able to convey that concept in what you're building in your product, and you've got users starting to test it, you can get that feedback to understand what will make this product really robust as well.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Ben. I'm going to come right back to you with the start of this one. And this is one of my favorite visuals that we have on the screen, this everybody pulling and getting a result they're not quite expecting. What tip or advice would you provide to a team that's launching a product or a group that's starting a new company to help allow for flexibility and an adaptation of the product?
Yeah, as I mentioned, like I don't mind as an investor if the product is mainly just made of scaffolding and there's two hamsters in a corner operating this thing to keep the lights on. If you've got customers, then you've done better than pretty much 99.9% of people out there anyway. And so I look at that and think that's definitely the main approach, is to understand who your target customer is and really start building the basic concept of what you need to get out there for them to start testing it. And, you know, I think a perfect example of this ability to adapt. So when pre-pandemic, Social Table, the company I started, was a social dining platform. So the idea was that you could book and pay for a single seat at a group table at a restaurant as a way of meeting people. Now, thanks to the gloriousness that is known as the pandemic, every single business opportunity I had closed overnight around the entire globe. And so you can't really plan for timing like that. And so I had to adapt. The other option was to fail. And sadly, a lot of businesses within the, you know, we saw a lot of businesses due to the pandemic actually fail because they weren't able to innovate or adapt fast enough. And so what we ended up doing was moving that whole platform to being completely online and having it as a virtual networking platform. And what we did then was we added this shared element, which was the piece that people really enjoyed about the social table aspect, which is meeting people outside of their usual circles and then also having a shared experience with these people. And so what we did is we incorporated wine, beer, spirits, and tea and had those delivered directly to people's houses, and then had a sommelier jump on for the first 30 minutes of the call to actually give people an opportunity to get some education, but then also, you know, without sounding rude, but it actually helped lubricate, I guess, that from a social standpoint of people being able to meet people that they didn't know. And so it kind of helped bring that element in. And then at the same time, we then had an algorithm to match people up so that you're actually meeting somebody like you. And so all of this had to sort of change and adapt as the pandemic sort of happened. And so having that flexibility and that adaptation was the only way that we were able to continue to grow. And so pre-pandemic, I think we're on 3 continents. Post-pandemic, we're on every continent, including having somebody call in from Antarctica and also an astronaut calling in once as well to do a social table event. And so really, I feel like if that's not out of this world domination, I'm not quite sure what constitutes, I suppose. But yeah, without being flexible and without
having, like, when you had an astronaut call in, that is like,
yeah,
that is way too cool.
And so yeah, thanks. And so like when I think about it, like, you know, without being able to be adapt and flow to the changes and those outside pressures, you know, I wouldn't have been able to tell a story like this and be able to have the experiences and have met the people that I've met as well and have the opportunity to exit my company. So, you know, you really have to start thinking about having that ability to adapt and change to the market pressures and flows as well.
Well, just a wonderful story and example for our audience. And I mentioned briefly while you were starting, now I'm very distracted knowing you had an astronaut call in for social table and wondering how I didn't get mashed at that table. But I mentioned briefly that the image on the screen is one of my favorite to convey this concept. And the reason for that is you have people that are lined up with largely the same rules in mind. And the objective is agreed upon by the group, but inevitably there's somebody who's chosen to go their own way. And in spite of having a clear sort of idea of what you're trying to accomplish as a team, there's a clear look of surprise at what's taking place on the event at the person in the front, because even with the best laid plan, sometimes the unexpected will happen. So we don't know. I always wonder if on the other side, everybody just took their hands off the rope and that's what's about to happen. And so, Elizabeth, I'm going to come over to you. Do you have a tip or piece of advice for an instance when a team is launching a new product and is going to need that flexibility and adaptation when everybody takes their hand off the rope, so to speak?
Yeah, I think, you know, and you both touched on this, I think it's really being able to be open to everyone on your team, right? That ideas are not hierarchical in an org structure, right? And so what I've seen is kind of maybe the reverse of a tip, would be, people who think that, okay, well, I can only listen to my executive staff. They'll know the right things here, and aren't being open to everyone else in the company on, maybe this is a great, channel to go find your customers in, or go connect with them in, or let's go try these different approaches. And I think that's a part where, being open, creating that culture where you actually allow for everyone to have equal access to voice their concerns or voice their opportunities that they see. And that, having a job title or having a job level, doesn't equate to you're the one that has all the ideas, or this is the only person we can listen to, right? And so that is, making sure that you create those startup cultures, you create these cultures that are inclusive to everyone's voice. So that, again, you don't get stuck in your own bias bubble of like, where I think the customer really likes this, I got a couple of data points, this is what we're going to do. Just make sure that you're really opening up, especially with these tectonic plagues, these shifts that happen. If it's, if it is, COVID, or if it's something else, we're always going to have huge changes that hit the market that are going to put us all in unfamiliar territory. And so at those moments, you want to make sure that people understand, again, going back to what the problem you're trying to solve is, what is that solution that we currently think that we're going to the market with. Make sure that you have a lot of good communication, and that you open up the feedback channels with your staff and with everybody else, so that you can, make sure that you're learning what's happening in the market in real time. So it's not something that has to wait another quarter and in a report that gets buried that no one reads. But that you have these open channels, especially during, moments where everyone, is reacting in real time to something. You want to be able to just create open channels of communication and feedback, and that no level or no person sort of gets ignored, right? That you allow people and you listen to people throughout your organization, and even customers. Maybe customers have those ideas too that come in. And so definitely think that's key, to make sure, you just listen and you be open to feedback.
Yeah, I agree with that, absolutely. I think that the element of being a founder is the fact that, a leader in a company in particular, is the fact that you always employ smart people around you. And those people are usually a lot smarter than you are as well. So remembering that their ideas are often very much more valid as well.
Well, I agree with both of you wholeheartedly. And I think you're adding such an interesting lens around this dialogue of product and growth roadmaps. We asked for a tip, and now I'm going to ask for either a cautionary tale or a success story. And I think, Ben, you offered a bit of what happens when there's a radical pivot. But do you have another story you'd like to share that talks about a product or company that attracted early customers and then had to shift their business model to support user adoption and company growth?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the perfect example of this is a lot of companies who, I work with, who have gone from being a B2C organization to changing their model to a B2B model. I think that in particular is a really easy success story, where you can actually see that you started the MVP, getting, going B2C and actually just getting users and getting that feedback, and then swapping your product over to a B2B model when you start going into that growth phase, particularly around being able to acquire customers, remembering that, selling to an end user or a B2C, it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. And also there's a large cost to that. Whereas if you can sell to one person, that actually gets you many people onto your platform, it's a lot easier to get that user adoption. And so, what I've noticed with a lot of the companies that I have invested in is that they start B2C and they, build a product, understand what their customers need and how the customers would use the product, and then swap over to a B2B model, excuse me, from a sales perspective, to be able to really grow and start getting that hyper growth in.
And just like you did such a great job defining MVP earlier, would you mind just explaining B2B and B2C
Yeah.
for anybody?
Sorry, I apologize. I definitely use a lot of acronyms. So B2B is like a business to business. So it's like when you sell to a company versus B2C, which is selling to an individual person at the end who's using your product. So, a perfect example of this would be, okay, Facebook, right? Facebook sells their platform to end consumers, but then at the same time, it also has an advertising model that it sells to companies to be able to promote their product. So there's two different models there.
Great. Thanks so much, Ben. And Elizabeth, how about you? A cautionary tale or a success story that you'd like to share with our audience?
Yeah, so yeah, I'm going to go on the B2B example because I think this is kind of a fun one. We had some entrepreneurs in our WeWork Labs location up in Seattle that was thinking about both B2B and B2C. They actually had product that was getting shipped. So they're they were a consumer packaged good company. And what was interesting about them is that they actually had already bought inventory and it was shipping out onto on a shipping container headed over to the Seattle area, and they had not sold anything yet. And so our leadership was coming into town, and when our leadership at WeWork was coming into town, it was always fun to go ahead and find, some startups to go ahead and just let them know what was going on. And so I arranged this meeting where it was like, okay, they had a product that WeWork could use. I was really excited about them. And so it was like, okay, hey, you have, because we never got a lot of warning or advance notice, but I was like, in 5 minutes, I'm going to come over and get you. And I want you to pitch what you're doing and your product, to our leadership. And I was like, maybe there's a connection and, we can dive into it. But yeah, I need you guys to, really tell your story and get excited. And we'd already worked on their story. And so, they were prepped and ready for any of these kind of moments. They were able to go ahead and given that moment, when they talked to our leadership, be able to sell what they were doing. And on that moment, WeWork took, half of their shipment that they were having over before it even hit the shores. That sale then allowed them to then to these startups to then go and tell other people, well, hey, we already have one B2B customer. I think this would be really exciting if you guys would be interested in this. And we were able to open up and put little plaques that, we bought, this product from so-and-so. And so then even inside of our WeWork, we gave them advertising. So they're able to like put and weave in the sales so that they could also create some advertising from it. So I think, when you're thinking about when you're launching a program, take any opportunity you possibly can. If someone's offering you a pitch, offering you an opportunity, take it and see what else you can get from that. See how, maybe there's a way that you can also, see if you can have advertising with them, through their channels. See if there's a way that you can add in extra so that people are aware of it. Is there a marketing campaign that you could do together? Is there some win-wins that are beyond just the product that you're selling? Is it something, because that other company is also interested in that problem space? And is there things that you can do together to highlight the problem space and these solutions that, hey, they're so smart for identifying that problem, and then 2, finding you as a solution, and then 2, hey, you're really great at also agreeing that that's a problem. 2, you're finding great solutions, and 3, you're finding great partners that want to work with you to solve that problem. And so you really want to create these win-win-win scenarios where you create allies and stakeholders together in solving that problem, and finding more ways to take advantage of the sale, right? And so really there is no transactions in business. It's always a relationship. There's always more that you could be doing together. And so think about it as not just a one-time sale, but what else can you add in that maybe have no monetary value, at an immediate, but maybe there's some other cool gains that you can get. And maybe it's, hey, we can use your logo or your brand in our selling. Maybe there's a way that you can, answer the calls to other future customers that we may have so that they do due diligence. Maybe there's a ways that we could partner together on a media campaign. There is sometimes money associated with that, but find those ways that you can create a bigger story that then you can go out into the market together to focus in on.
That's great. Well, Elizabeth and Ben both shared two really wonderful examples. And what I love in this topic in particular is they're reinforcing, as they're giving these examples, earlier elements of what they shared in the talk itself, right? We heard this concept of problem just come up, and what problem are we solving and what value are we creating repeatedly, and what Elizabeth just shared. One of my favorite cautionary tale, rather success stories of products could have been a cautionary tale, and it's Netflix. And Netflix had a problem that they wanted to solve, and it was a very simple problem. They didn't like that the consumer had to go to a video store to get a video, and then they would be charged late fees. And they didn't like that somebody controlled what content was available to you. And they thought, what if we could get access to more content that's more interesting and more relevant to more consumers? But one of the things Ben shared earlier was this importance of timing, not being fixed on the solution. So they wanted to solve this problem. They felt like they had a really solid understanding of their user. But if you remember the marketplace, when Netflix originally started, before it became a household name and before it became an action verb, Netflix was something that was new to the market. They were once upon a time a startup. And when they were starting up, there was still dial-up internet for a lot of consumers. And so their original go-to-market launch and product was about delivering something called a DVD. And some of you may not know this, but I think they even had some VHS. Both of those are types of ways to present content that used to be able to be played back. So if you're not familiar with it, they're concepts that people used to have. And you would get them in the mail, in the traditional mail, and then you would return them in the mail. You would literally go to a mailbox and you'd put it in the mail, and then your next one would come when that one was returned. And it was a very innovative concept, but it could have been a cautionary tale if they had tried to launch earlier as the content creator that they are today. So if they had prioritized what part of the problem they were solving for the consumer without thinking about timing, Netflix could have been a cautionary tale. Netflix could have been acquired by Blockbuster at one point. They weren't. Obviously, we know how that story ended. Blockbuster is now an Airbnb. So this is a beautiful story about understanding the problem, understanding your customer, and then prioritizing needs based on the customer's values, the customer's readiness to adopt the product, and the infrastructure, the timing of the market you're serving. And that combination of factors, as well as the combination that we've been learning about around people in the organization and how that organization creates an intentionally inclusive and collaborative environment, those elements are all parts of a successful agile growth roadmap. And I think that's where passion meets execution. And that's something I think is very, very exciting to think about. So turning it back to you, Ben, coming back to you, I'm going to ask, before we open it up to audience questions, if you have any last thoughts you'd like to share with our audience.
Yeah, absolutely. I really just want to hit home on something that I shared earlier, and that's get your product out there as fast as you can. I think that there's this whole element, as I mentioned earlier, about perfection, and particularly as founders, we want, because whatever we put out there is almost a reflection of us, right? There's always that fear around that. But I'm a very big believer in getting stuff out there and getting feedback on it as soon as you can, because that's the only way to really understand your customers and understand whether or not that you've got product market fit. Because finding product market fit, as Kelly was mentioning, is the most important thing in ensuring that you do have a product that people will buy and that people will start using as well. So yeah, I just have this big element that I want to push people to launch earlier and launch their MVP earlier to get it in the hands of customers to start getting feedback.
Thanks, Ben. And Elizabeth, coming over to you. Any last thoughts before we open it up to audience questions?
Yeah, I think, get feedback from, lots of different stakeholders. You're not in this alone. there is your investors, there's your, potential customers, potential, employees and team members. Just be open on who provides you input, who, where you get inspiration from, but be bold in which problems you want to solve in the world. We don't need, extra juicers, right? Which was like this horrible startup that like raised lots of money, but like at the end of the day did the same thing, that you could have just like pushed juice out with these packets by your hand. You didn't need this expensive machine. Don't create more juicers. Don't create more garbage for the world. We have serious problems, and so please just go out and go, be bold with your ideas and encourage you to engage a large stakeholder group in trying to solve those.
I think that's so important. Earlier, one of you shared that this is a relationship. I think it was you, Elizabeth, that business is about relationships, but you also have a relationship with the problem you're solving. And so one of the things that's really important, whether I'm talking to startup founders or I'm talking to internal, what I like to call entrepreneurs, so innovation experts within enterprise organizations about their career, is really encouraging you to align the work you're doing with your passions, to align the problem that you're solving with the passion that you are truly excited about, because you're going to be working on it for a long time. So develop a career, search for the industries where you're excited about the work to be done. You're excited about the business objectives, no matter what stage you are in the organization. And certainly, if you're a startup founder thinking about solving a problem, align to your big why and the problem that you're solving. Don't just try to chase what you believe will be profitable. Really think about a large enough market and a problem that you're excited to solve for the next 10 plus years, because there'll be a lot of iterations. So that said, I'm going to open it up for a few minutes to audience questions. If you are in our audience live, feel free to either add to the chat or simply use the hand raise feature at the bottom of the reactions, and we'll invite you to be able to share live. I did receive one question that came in the chat ahead of time, and I'll just share for either of you. If you had one piece of advice for a startup leader that's learning as they go, what piece of advice would you offer?
I'm just going to jump in there. I think one of the most important things, and it sounds so silly and ridiculous, is create an Excel sheet of like who you're contacting, who you're reaching out to, who are your stakeholders. And, some people have really, expensive CRMs. You don't even need that. But when you're starting out, just, classify them. Could they be a potential investor, potential customer, or a potential employee, or other, right? And then just identify, when's the first time you connected in with them? Okay, what did they say? What do they want? What's some feedback? When do you need to go connect in with them again? Put that calendar invite in and go connect in with them. You creating these relationships, you promising to do what you say you're going to do, and you connect back in with these folks, that is going to really just change the game for you. And again, it's just relationship management, again, just tracking how you're doing it, create a system. And when you feel stuck, go back to that system, either add names to that, well, maybe I need more customers. Maybe I need to go talk to more people, get some more input, put that in and just track it. It's the silliest thing in the world, but it makes a difference, and be methodical in that process.
That's great. And Ben, how about for you? What piece of advice or tip would you offer to the leader who's learning as they go?
Yeah, I think the statement that I need to start with is that we're all learning, so don't stress about that. We're all always learning. And then also, like, I think that a lot of mistakes I've seen in particular relate to being, having money and throwing it at the problem, hoping that that's going to fix it, rather than being strategic and actually trying to understand what needs to be done. And I think in reference to that, being a founder, particularly at the very early stages, takes a lot of hard work. You're putting your brand out there without having any money for advertising. So how do you do that? You have to be really, inventive and jumping on Facebook chat groups and like, adding in your link and asking people for advice and doing the things the hard way. And I think that's something that I really want people to really think about, is that, being what's the word? Being inventive in the way that you go about getting your brand out there, particularly in the early stages, is really important. And so, my advice to any founder is to really keep remembering that, until you've got revenue coming in, doing everything under, the smell of oily rag or as cheaply as you possibly can is going to be key to success as well.
Thanks, Ben. And we did get a question in chat. So Ben, I'm going to come right back to you on this one. And I'm going to ask, what are the most important qualities that you look for when you're building a team?
Yeah, absolutely. I mentioned earlier that, as a leader of an organization, your goal is to get people who are much smarter than you to come and work with you and help solve your problem, or the problem that you're trying to solve. And so, when I think about that, it's, the thing that's most important is to ensure that they have the same vision of solving a problem, on the same problem as you are, or that you do. And I guess, like, particularly in those early stages of getting people along or moving into working with you in your company, it's like early adopters from a customer standpoint. They really have to believe in the problem that you're solving and believe in the solution that you're providing. And, again, it goes back to the solution is not going to be perfect, but working on it together hopefully will mean that, having that why and having that vision of being able to overcome that problem, you'll be able to create the right solution together.
That's great. And Elizabeth, any thoughts from you on this one?
I, again, agree with everything that Ben just said. I think the, addition is, get people that are contrary to you. Try to get people that have different skill sets, different experiences. You want a good variety of input, right? And ideas that are around the table. So make sure that that you complement the skill set that you have with a team that has just contrary skill set, so that again it can complement you and complement the entire team. So it can be you can think about things in more than just one angle. You have that ability to lean on your team just to have things come up that you would never think of on your own. So if that's different backgrounds, if that's different subjects that they're experts in, don't pack the team with only technologists. You do want other people to be thinking about the different areas of your business. And also with remote work too, it's also fun to work with people outside that that maybe you've never even met before in real life. And that is okay. I think sometimes when you're building these teams, it's scary to think about working with someone that you don't see face to face. And, the pandemic proved that you can, and that we can collaborate with folks that, maybe even in a different region. So depending on what problem you're solving and how you're doing that, thinking about connecting in with people that just share that passion for that problem, but again, brings just a different lens to, their experience of how they experience that problem, or how they are thinking about the solution to that problem, etc. It's always good to have some variability around the table.
That's great. I think that's just chock full of value add. I would add two quick elements that I think are really important. One, just as Ben shared earlier, that timing is important in product development and how you launch. Timing is also really important in who you hire and when you hire. So I really encourage you to think about the objectives and key results you're trying to achieve as a company at the stage that you're at, and make strategic hires that fill the gaps in your current team skill sets. I refer to this as intentionally inclusive hiring. It's a substitute for this concept of culture fit. Instead, we're talking about culture add, adding to the teams the roles that are going to take you closer to the objectives that you're trying to achieve at the stage that you're at. That said, we'll have one final question, and then I'm going to hand it back to Nathan. Very rapid fire. Ben, over to you. What's the best way to decide which idea to start with as a business if you have more than one?
That's a very big question. I think, doing market research, like asking the question to people who may be users at some point, like asking questions, asking them, what they think about a couple of different ideas, and getting advice on that as fast as you can, I think is definitely going to be helpful. I'm a big believer in putting ideas out there and seeing what comes back to you, because in terms of the advice that you are given very early on can sort of help you decide which direction you need to take the product as well. So again, it's about problem solving the problem, not with the product itself. Yeah.
Outstanding. This is a big question. Elizabeth, over to you. I'm giving this a rapid fire, like 30 seconds. What's the best way to decide which idea when you have many?
Yeah, customer interviews, right? Steve Blank says, get out of the building, get 100, interviews underneath your belt to really understand what the market wants, what's available. So yeah, customer interviews. And then also, if you're trying to do a startup that is high scale and scaling, also talk to VCs about that problem space. Are they interested in it? What would they require for them to invest? What are the kind of metrics they need? What kind of traction would they be looking for? Get their input early on, even in your idea stage, just to make sure that, that there's even an appetite to invest in that space and that they don't think it's already saturated.
Thank you both. Ben and Elizabeth volunteered their time today to share their expertise with the community. We appreciate it. You are incredible wealth of knowledge, and you bring just a tremendous value. I know our audience will appreciate it, both those who are live and the many who will follow up. Follow them. They're both on Twitter and LinkedIn, and they're just constantly giving back to the community. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Elizabeth. Over to you, Nathan.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you again, Ben and Elizabeth, for taking your time out of your day to speak with us. This was such an insightful conversation, and I think based on the engagement and questions we had, I think it was an incredibly valuable lesson for everyone who tuned in. I will be dropping the feedback survey into the chat box below, so feel free to take a moment to fill that out right now if possible, right over here. And it will help us improve our future sessions. Our next Business Bites will be coming up in June, so be on the lookout for the registration link in our follow-up email, along with the replay link to this session. And with that, have a great rest of your day or morning, and I look forward to seeing all of you in June.